Hi there, this is ShelleyDuvallScream, and this week I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite films, Carrie. For this video, I'm going to do something a little bit different, and not only am I going to talk about Brian de Palma's 1976 film, I'm also going to be talking about Kimberly Pierce's 2013 remake. As anyone who's seen my intro knows, Carrie is the movie that got me into horror. I saw it a couple summers ago, and the next day I immediately went out and bought Stephen King's book, and I read it in 2 nights. King's book is important here because the thing I really love about Carrie is the story. The book and film follow a teenage girl. She's a senior in high school, and her name is Carrie. She's bullied by a lot of the other girls at the school, specifically Queen Bee, Chris Hargensen, and one of her good friends, Sue Snell. We open first in gym class, but then go quickly to a shower scene in the locker room afterwards, where Carrie, for the first time, gets her period. For any other 18-year-old girl, this would be a routine event, but it's never happened to Carrie before, and she freaks out. When the other girls see her and realize what's going on, they start taunting her. They start chanting, "Plug it up," and throwing tampons and pads at her. The gym teacher, Miss Desjardins, sees what's going on and she stops the girls, but Carrie's already pretty traumatized. She goes home that day and she has to deal with her mother. In De Palma's film, Mrs. White is played by Piper Laurie, and in the remake she's played by Julianne Moore. Mrs. White is staunchly religious, extremely overbearing, and she believes that Carrie, being the product of her own sin, sex, is sort of an incarnation of sin. When Carrie tells her about what happened that day, she quotes to her from the Bible and makes her repeat, the first sin was intercourse, Eve was weak. She makes her say these things and locks her in a closet to pray. There are a couple things about Carrie that are important to know. One is that she's an outcast. In his book, King describes her as ugly. He actually specifically based her on a girl he knew. The other is that she has some sort of power, which she's just discovering. When the girls are taunting her in the shower, she causes a light bulb above them to shatter. And this is the first time we see that Carrie's rage can make things happen. She starts researching telekinesis, and as she reads about it, she finds ways to control what she can do. This telekinesis is a really important part of her character and of the story, and it was sort of King's way of personifying the unknown strength and power of a teenage girl. Her telekinesis is an outlet for all of the abuse that she suffers at school and at home, and we really see that in the climax scene at the prom. This is something that I really love about Carrie, and it's the question of who the monster, what the monster really is in this film. Obviously, it comes from Carrie herself, but her anger and her power are fueled by something very different. It's not just her own inner whatever. It has to do with all of the things that she deals with every day. It has to do with the abuse, the names she's called, the fact that somebody graffitis Carrie White eats shit on the school gym. You get a clear sense that she might not even have this power if she weren't put through the things she's put through, and that things never would have gone the way they did if people hadn't been so cruel to her. So while yes, Carrie is the monster in this film, so is everyone else. After Mrs. Desjardins catches these girls taunting Carrie, she gives them detention and tells them that if they don't keep up with her athletic detention, they're not going to the prom. Chris Hargensen, who believes that this is all Carrie's fault and that she doesn't deserve this punishment because Carrie had it coming, mouths off to the gym teacher and gets her prom privileges revoked. All of the other girls go through with the detention, but one of them, Sue Snell, seems to feel like it wasn't enough, and that suffering through this detention isn't enough to make up for what they did to Carrie. In an attempt to make up for it, she asks her boyfriend, Tommy Ross, to take Carrie to the prom instead of her. After some convincing, he agrees to do it, and he asks Carrie, who immediately says no. She thinks it's a joke. She thinks that they're going to do something to embarrass her. But he's persistent and assures her that they're not trying to trick her in any way, and eventually she says yes. In Pierce's film, I did get a bit more of a sense of uncertainty about Sue's intentions in asking Tommy to take Carrie to prom. Chris calls her out and basically says she's only doing it to make herself feel better, which I don't think is entirely untrue. While Sue is planning to get Carrie to the prom, Chris is planning a way to ruin it for her. She and her boyfriend, Billy, played by John Travolta in the original film, come up with this plan that I'm sure all of you know. So, the night of the prom, Carrie's getting ready. She makes herself a dress, and her mother stops her. She tells her she can't go. And more importantly, she says, they're all going to laugh at you. This is when Mrs. White sees the full brunt of Carrie's powers. Her telekinesis has really been something she's kept to herself, but here she uses it to keep her mother from stopping her from leaving. In De Palma's film, she sort of paralyzes her mother, but the scene is much more violent in Pierce's film. She holds her almost in a like Darth Vader. She holds her up by her throat and then slams her into her prayer closet, locks the door, and burns the lock shut. In De Palma's film, I think, honestly, it's the awe at what her daughter is capable of that keeps Margaret from following Carrie or stopping her. With her mother incapacitated, Carrie leaves with Tommy for the prom. The portrayal of the prom in De Palma's film is really beautifully done. It's very ethereal, very much in soft focus, and it feels like a dream almost. I feel like this style really allowed us to see the prom and experience the prom the way that Carrie does. Pierce didn't really try to copy that style, and though I do feel like she did a decent job portraying prom, there were definitely times when I felt her Carrie was too at home, too comfortable being there. Something about the disorienting movement of the camera, the soft focus, the colors and everything really makes it feel like this can't possibly be real in De Palma's film. And you see it in Carrie's face. You can feel with her the disbelief that this is actually happening. Tommy and Carrie actually end up having a great time at the prom. She really enjoys herself until she notices that she and Tommy are listed as candidates for prom king and queen. She really doesn't want to be involved in it, but Tommy tells her to the devil with false modesty, and they vote for themselves. Now, it's important to know that Chris Hargensen and her friends have rigged the vote so that they're sure Carrie and Tommy will get elected so that they can pull off their prank. So they call their names, and Tommy and a very shocked Carrie make their way to the stage, and they give them their crowns and hand Carrie flowers, and this is really where the two films become completely different. Just at the right moment, when Carrie has taken her spot on stage, Chris pulls the cord, and a bucket of pig's blood jumps onto her. In De Palma's film, at this point, everything is silent. You see the shocked crowd, you see Tommy, who is furious, but most importantly, you see Carrie, who opens her eyes and snaps. From the moment she opens her eyes after the pig's blood hits her, to the time she gets back to her house at the end of all of this, her face does not change. Her eyes stay wide open, and it's like she's in some sort of horrifying trance. Over the silence, you hear what Carrie may very well be hearing in her head. You hear her mother's voice, repeating, "They're all gonna laugh at you." This sort of frenzy of sound builds up until Carrie breaks. In De Palma's film and in King's book, Carrie is the only one who gets out of there alive. Pierce handled the climax of this film extremely differently. In the remake, Carrie specifically targets her bullies as the victims of her violence at the prom. She does lock the doors, she does turn on the sprinkler, she does start a fire, but it's only the people who were outwardly cruel to her that she kills. And for me, this ruined the entire thing. The fact that Pierce allowed Carrie to only kill specific characters, and even the way it was acted, it seems like Carrie revels in it. Carrie is all about not just the monsters inside of us, but the monster and the cruelty that other people create. It's important, I think, in De Palma's film that Carrie isn't actively seeking people out, that she's not targeting individuals, that it's not just revenge for the things that were done to her. I think Pierce's film really takes away that feeling of true dread, because it's people get what they deserve in Pierce's film. Not that those people deserve to die for bullying her, but she only kills people who, to this point, are villains. The fact that everyone dies in De Palma's film and in the book, it makes you question your loyalties here. Because the entire time you're rooting for Carrie and you want her to be okay. But the cruelty that she's endured has made her into something far beyond the evil of Chris Hargensen or her friends. It's really about the way that mistreating other people can have massive, massive consequences, far beyond individual disputes. And that's really what I love about Carrie. I could spend a lot more time talking about this. I could say it a bunch of different ways, but when it comes down to it, I think that De Palma really captured the spirit of King's book and the ideas that he was trying to portray, while Pierce made a shock revenge film. Thank you guys for watching and listening. I hope my slightly passionate ramblings make sense to all of you. And I hope you'll tune in next week when I talk about another one of my favorite films, Let the Right One In.